Welcome to the Scaleup Valley podcast, where we bring the best tech leaders in the world to help you scale from 2 million ARR to 100 million ARR. Today, we have a very special guest. His name is Ryan Bonnici, the CMO at G2. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me.
So, Ryan, let's get to know a little bit more about yourself. So how did you end joining G2?
Yeah, so I've been at G2 for, a little over 2 years now. And I was always really familiar with G2. I've worked for the last decade in software marketing, so SaaS marketing. And so I think, anyone that's worked in SaaS is very kind of well aware of G2 because it's sort of the modern way people buy software today based on peer reviews, as opposed to kind of like the old school businesses, which was listening to an analyst, and their recommendation. And the reality is that analysts are totally pay to play and B, just because like an analyst, even if they're not pay to play, thinks one product is good for you, they can't customize that recommendation based on who you are. And that's really where our platform differentiates. So you come to g2.com and you tell us, are you a small, medium enterprise business? What software are you looking for? What kind of budget do you have? What features do you need? And then our platform will recommend the best software for you based on what other people like you have said about the software that they use. It's super customized. So I mentioned that purely because, I was a software marketer for so long. And I'd worked at Salesforce and HubSpot and ExactTarget and Microsoft. So some pretty amazing companies that I was really lucky to be a part of. I guess I was like very familiar with G2 the entire time. And it was interesting when Godard, the CEO, reached out to me about a year before I joined. We had a really great chat. But, it really wasn't right for me at that time to leave HubSpot. And then a year later, he'd been still looking for a CMO and interviewing lots of candidates. And no one seems to have clicked with him in the way that we clicked when we first met. So he reconnected, and luckily that timing worked for me. So that's kind of, really quickly how I guess came to G2.
Sounds amazing. And just to give some context to the audience, in what stage of growth is G2? So funding rounds in terms of ARR, if you can disclose an interval, in terms of head count.
Yeah, sure. So we raised our Series C about a year and a half ago. Mm-hmm. So all up, we've raised about 100 mil across seed, A, B, and C. Some of our lead investors are LinkedIn, Excel, IVP, Emergence, Pritzker. We've got a bunch of really amazing VCs. What else can I disclose? I guess in our last raise, TechCrunch kind of did their calculations and kind of calculated us about a year and a half ago being valued at around $500 million. So I guess you can kind of like work your way from there around as to what our ARR was. In terms of employee size, when I joined 2 years ago, we were about 150 employees, and now we're about 450 employees. So pretty dramatic growth. And the marketing team was about 5 people when I joined, and is now around 50 to 60-ish people.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Sounds an amazing journey.
Yeah, it's been a great journey so far. I mean, I'm really fortunate to work with an amazing executive team at G2. So, our CEO and founder and co-founder, this is his third/fourth, business that he has started or /acquired. And, he sold his first to Oracle for $500 million and his second to Salesforce for roughly $500 million. So he's really focused on taking G2 public. So it's fun to be on kind of a rocket ship that's really focused on IPOing.
Got it. Sounds amazing, and very interesting that you talk about the amazing executive team that you work with, because I really believe that I would say even after 5 million, 10 million ARR, it is really, the strategy is really no more the job of the CEO, but the job of the leadership team. And this is a very difficult transition for any CEO, and even for the previous executives, who needs to think much more as CEOs themselves and get out of their own functional areas, of their own business units or geos, and become the brain of the company and be able to collectively build that strategy. And one of the ingredients that we always discuss on the show is the importance of focus, especially when the resources are much more available. It is very counterintuitive, but that's when the laser focus is so critical. So how I know that you offer different segments, as you said in the beginning, SMBs, mid-markets, enterprise. I imagine different verticals across software, different geos with US and Europe. At least I saw you also at SaaS Talk and Goddard as well. So how do you ensure focus with so much diversity in terms of verticals, geos, and segments to serve?
Yeah, I mean, really good point. Focus is definitely something that I think is harder in earlier stage companies because there are so many routes you can go down, right? And even for us today, right, where I'd say we're pretty mature as a company, in the startup world, right? Like we're scaling up, absolutely. So we have our MVP, we know how to get to profitability, we have all of those items down pat, but at the same time, there's so many other product additions or expansions that we could go down. So, the way we try and focus, and it's not always perfect, but we oftentimes look at what does our customer want. And when we think about customer, we think about the millions of buyers that come to G2.com every week. So, we have millions of buyers that are coming to G2.com every week, and they're looking for software and services. So to your point, by listening to them and looking at what they were searching for on our site, we were able to expand the number of software categories. So now I think we have more than 2,500 categories of software, which is just mind-boggling to think, right? So that's, I guess, another area where we differentiate from, analyst firms. Analyst firms wouldn't be able to have an analyst specializing in each of these different areas, whereas because we lean, instead of analysts, we lean on actually real users of software. We can scale up across so many more verticals and so many more industries and so many more software categories so much quicker. So I guess that's one thing. So we listen to our customers, and then we ultimately just think about, and we look at their journey when they're buying software. So, what are the pain points in buying software? There's so many along the journey, and we've solved some of them, but there's still many more that we need to solve. So some of the problems, I think that we've solved is, in the past, if you were looking to buy, let's say, CRM software, it was really difficult to know who was best for you, because if you go on all of the top CRM websites, all of their messaging ultimately looks similar, right? If you look at any email marketing provider, their messaging looks similar. They've got happy customers. And it's not really until you can actually listen to the true voice of their customers en masse that you could start to learn from that. So we looked at, that was obviously an important feature and transparency component. We then thought, okay, now once we've helped people find the best software for them, what happens next? Well, typically they go into a negotiation where they're discussing pricing, features and things like that. And so, that was then another layer that we added onto the G2.com platform was pricing. So, we ask people now when they're leaving reviews how much they pay for their software, how much that software costs. Is it per head? Is it per email send? If it's email marketing software, is it per contact in your database? If it's CRM software, right? There's very customized questions dependent on, what the software is that someone is looking to buy. And so, I think, we really do sort of drink our own champagne in the sense of, we encourage software companies to leverage their customers' voice, because that's the most powerful way they can sell to their future customers, right? Word of mouth marketing is really kind of where marketing began. And I think we're kind of coming back to 360 on that, whereby people are realizing if they just buy based on marketing alone, they're going to buy something that isn't the best fit for them. And so, we're coming kind of back to that. So yeah, I think when we think about focus, we ultimately think about what is the most critical thing a buyer needs when buying software, and then we kind of prioritize accordingly.
Got it. Sounds amazing. And in terms of your own function, in terms of marketing, you gave a very good interview with Iris Tabbings at the Saster podcast, where you talk about owning revenue. And I follow you on LinkedIn and Twitter, and you talk a lot about results and achieving results as something very important for you in your career. And of course, having a good balance between achieving results and treating well people, and also understanding that having the right people on the right seats will deliver results. And we have this kind of dilemma between the short-term and the long-term projects and impacts of marketing. So what is your position about this mix of short and long-term, owning revenue, not owning revenue, and influencing revenue?
Yeah, good questions. So I think for me, because there's a few things to unpack, I guess, in that question. I think if we focus just on like short-term versus long-term, I mean, I think anyone starting in any role, needs to be thinking about both. And what I mean there is, right, when you're a new leader coming into a team, whether that's a new sales leader or whether that's a new marketing leader or a product leader, typically you're hired as a leader because of your vision, right? Like the fact that you can get the long-term team, the long-term product, the long-term strategy, really kind of like cruising really well. But then you're also hired as well because, you, in theory, your experience and your ability to recognize patterns will allow you to enter a business and really quickly be able to implement some tactics that you just know will lift boats quickly. So I think of it that like, I think when you're joining a new company, you've got like 90 days to show some really quick wins. And those wins can be on the relationship side and they can be on the results side. And ideally you want both. So I talk a lot about this idea in business of like, needing to balance building relationships and driving results. Right. And I think, that was something that I learned, earlier on in my career. I probably over-indexed on results at the expense of relationships. So I think, I was able to accelerate really quickly as an individual contributor and always drive results. But then as I started to become a manager and move up in management, I didn't really understand the importance of building cross-functional relationships. So I was always kind of focused on building relationships with my team, no doubt, because I needed my team to help drive results. But I probably, over-indexed on that as opposed to like relationships with other teams and how I could, integrate with other teams and help them succeed as well. And so anyway, the reason why I mentioned that is, if you enter a business and all you do is focus on in like the first 90 days on building relationships, that could be a win in some senses, right? Like when I joined G2, there wasn't a very strong relationship between sales and marketing, as an example. Marketing would often book trade shows for conferences without speaking to sales to see if sales would even want to work a booth at that conference. So there was a massive disconnect there. So that was a really quick way I was able to start to, build and have a quick win on the relationship side. But at the end of the day, though, like relationships only take you so far because, you need to see results as well. And so, I think whenever I joined a company, luckily I've worked at a lot of different companies now where I've got kind of like pattern recognition. So when I see certain problems, is our traffic creating a problem? Is it our conversion rate that's driving a problem? Is it our sales demo where there's a problem in terms of the conversion process? Like I can start to like look at those problems and then I can recognize like what solution will quickly fit in to fix that. Yes, I think I've answered part of your question anyways around kind of like long-term versus short-term. I think you need to drive both essentially. And that's why as a leader, you're paid more and you have more stress. It's because like you need to think about like what are some quick wins that you can deliver on, as well as, how do you deliver on those quick wins while building for the future? Right. And then, managing and balancing relationships and results, I think is key.
And the second part was related with owning or not owning revenue. If I remember well, you talked that you were responsible for a specific segment, small business, and you own the revenue targets there from marketing.
Yeah, and look, I think it's hard in a B2B company to ever fully own revenue, right? because of the fact that there's typically a sales team. The way I like to think of it typically for most B2B businesses is that, you own like building demand for a portion of revenue. So
Right.
I think what I talked to Harry a little bit about was that, so we have different segments that we sell to. We sell to, growth stage companies. We sell to kind of like mid-market companies. We sell to enterprise companies. And we're really evenly split across all of those companies that we sell to. And what we find is, for those smaller segments, marketing can drive anywhere from 50 to 80% of the revenue. And when I say drive, what I mean, to be really technical is, we source the revenue. So marketing is the kind of function that gets those smaller and mid-market companies to raise their hand to say, hey, I want to speak to one of your consultants. I want to learn more. So when we think of MQLs, we think of someone explicitly raising their hand to speak to a salesperson. That's not to say we don't do a lot of work also to expand our database and to drive more and more leads. But I would never hand over a lead to a sales rep under kind of the guise of it being an MQL, because if the salesperson starts to call these leads and then they don't want to speak to sales, that then hurts my relationship with sales, because it looks like I'm handing over things that aren't ready to speak to them. So I guess that sourcing kind of is really important to me, because I want it to be really clear to sales that, if it wasn't for marketing, you wouldn't have had these deals, because like you didn't know they were wanting to shop. And so we drove those kind of like demo requests for you. Mm-hmm. Now I think like as you move up market into bigger deals, if I think of our enterprise team, right, we might have, a handful of people, and each of them might be focused on 10, huge enterprise Fortune 500 accounts, right? Now, the reality there is that marketing most likely isn't ever going to source a deal. We might, right? But even if we do source a deal, it's going to be rather hard to measure that. And the reason why is that, if you think of most B2B sales functions, they will create opportunities for Fortune 500 companies in whatever CRM they're using. And they will create those opportunities to then take notes on the opportunity, to then add context to the opportunity as they are speaking to different parts of those businesses. And so it's hard for marketing in my world to ever source, and I'm air quoting when I say that, those opportunities, because, they're typically deals that reps have been working maybe 3, 6, 9, 12, or even 24 months to kind of like close. So they're just much more long-term. So in the enterprise space, my team measures their effectiveness based on engagement into those accounts. So are we adding new contacts at those senior accounts? Are we driving engagement from those contacts at those accounts, whether that is, inviting them to a CMO dinner or to, a Chicago Cubs game where we have a VIP box, or, are we sending direct mail to certain people in that company to engage and create new relationships and new conversations? But ultimately, I think for me, and this has always been a really important thing for me in my career, is the closer I and my team can be to revenue, the more successful we're going to be, because we're going to drive the thing that matters most to the business. And it's not just that revenue matters most to the business, it's that like revenue that's going to retain itself matters most, right? So happy customers.
Got it.
So yeah, that's sort of how I think about it. And I think what's important when you align yourself to revenue and results in that way, you're making it really easy to make sure that you get promotions and that you get raises and that you earn more money, because you're completely aligned to the revenue drivers of the business.
Yep. Got it. So in order to achieve those kind of 2, 3x or even 5x growth, we were discussing the first ingredient to scale in our show, which is focus. And so let's move to the second one, which is all related with team, that we already touched in the beginning of the podcast. And in the team component, what we see of high-performing teams, as we were discussing before, is when the team can think about the company as a whole, and the interest of the company again is to drive that fellow, to build that category, to achieve results, and to work together. So what are the main differences from leading a team of 5 and now of 60 with middle managers nowadays, and with a different structure to lead. So what are the main changes of mindset and of your own practices that you need to make in order to become a CMO for this 4.0 or 5.0 stage of the company?
Yeah. Good question. Look, I mean, I think if you think of a small team, I mean, there's pros and cons of all size teams. There's things I love about, a 5-person team, and then things I dislike, and vice versa for a 50-person team. I think what's really nice when you're in a small team is that communication flows really naturally, right? Typically, everyone is sitting together. Everyone's in the loop. Information isn't siloed. Everyone knows what everyone is working on. So that's some of the nice things. Some of the downsides, though, is that you typically have more generalists on your team, people that can do multiple things. And what happens, I find, when people can do multiple things is, no fault of their own, but they don't do them as well because they're not experts in their fields. So if you have, you might have a field marketer that's running big events, small events, direct mail, digital advertising, email marketing. And the reality is, they don't have time to do all of those things incredibly well, most likely, because they don't have enough time to really sink their teeth into the space and to start to experiment. They're typically quite busy in a small stage, team. So that's, I guess, the other con side of the house. If you think then, when you're scaling a team up right now with 50 people, the reality is, I don't get to speak to every person on my team every day, every week, maybe every month, right? And so because of that, you need to be really, I guess, kind of intentional about communication and about processes, so that everyone on the team understands why you're doing what you're doing, how you're going to communicate with them, what frequency you will meet with them. So, as an example, right, I have on some of our teams, we have sort of 3 core teams in marketing at G2. So I have a content and SEO team led by, a really remarkable leader called Kevin Indig from Atlassian. We hired him about a year ago. He has, a dozen to 2 dozen sort of folks under him focused on creating content to, increase traffic and buyers to our site. We then have a demand gen team run by another amazing leader called Adam Goyette, who was in Thrive, an online CRM platform similar to HubSpot, actually. He has, a dozen or so folks under him focused on much more traditional B2B marketing. So how do we, enable our sales reps to have more and more deals to work? How do we accelerate those deals? How do we increase the conversion rate of those deals in terms of closing? And then our third and final sort of team in marketing is called Brand and Buzz, and it's run by another, super remarkable leader on the team. Her name's Lauren Decker. She and I work together at ExactTarget and Salesforce. And so, I think for me, when I think of building teams, the most important thing to me when I joined was how do I build a really strong kind of second level leadership team? Because I think at the end of the day, if you need to be involved in everything, if I need to be involved in everything that my team's doing, in every decision, A, I would never sleep. B, I would probably be really depressed because I wasn't sleeping, and probably because I wasn't living my life outside of work. And also, that's just ineffective because my team can't move fast then if I need to be involved in everything. So really hiring an amazing second line leadership team for me was key. And, I'm really, really lucky to work with Lauren, Adam, and Kevin, because they're all just remarkable. And realistically, they don't need me at all. I could go on vacation for probably 3 months and I would come back and things would be fine, if not better than when I left, I'm sure.
Awesome.
And so I think, hiring a really remarkable leadership team is something that I really pride myself on. And it's something that I hear often from my team is that from them, they feel like, a superpower of mine is finding really great people, which is a really nice thing to hear, obviously, because, you are nothing without your team. So I think a lot about that. But yeah, I mean, it's totally different, right? My job now at G2, 2 years in versus when I started. When I started, I was setting up, email nurture campaigns in HubSpot. I was building kind of workflows for tasks in Asana. And I was, meeting directly with sales reps to learn from them and their customers. And now I get every now and then to kind of dabble in some of those places. But more so, I think my job is actually to take a step back often from the day-to-day, the busy work, and actually focus on like learning from everyone else around me at other companies, so that then I can find cool ideas and impactful ideas from other companies and bring that into my team. So as an example, right, I take Wednesday every week and I work from home on Wednesday, and I have like a policy where I don't do any meetings in the day, which I almost always kind of keep by. But sometimes, if it's urgent, I'll take a meeting. And that's really like a day. Like if I think of yesterday, I listened to probably like 5 different podcasts. I read a bit of a book. I reply to people on Slack when they need things, but it's like my day to not work in the traditional sense of the word on busy things, but actually to work on like sharpening my skill set as a leader, as a marketer, as a board advisor, and to learn from other really amazing people out there, much better than me, from, what I can then bring from them into my team. And if I think back 2 years, there's no way in hell I would have been able to take, Wednesday working from home when I had 5 people on my team, right? Like we were too busy. But now I can do that. And I think it's actually so important that I do that, because if I don't, I'm not going to be getting better, and I'm not then going to be bringing newer ideas to my team to think bigger and better. So they're just some of the things I guess I think about. I think it's also really important to build a team that really thrives off of feedback and is constantly giving and receiving feedback, because I think that's just the most important way that I've grown in my career. And I think if you can build a team that is really great at giving and receiving feedback, then, you might make mistakes, we all will, but you'll be able to learn from them really quickly and excel really, really fast.
Yeah, and you have introduced the last ingredient, critical ingredient in your opinion, to scale, which is all about culture, that shared vision, that shared values, that culture of feedback, those values of being frank and of having radical candor with each other. Do you have any practices or any rhythms that are really useful for you to have everyone on the same page and to develop culture with your team? You were talking previously about some of the rituals that you have for yourself and to develop yourself. So in order to develop your team, there are any rituals or any rhythms that are working quite well for you?
Good question. So, I think for like developing the team, so I meet with all of my direct reports, so Lauren, Kevin, and Adam, every week for an hour. That's really important to me. And they really guide the direction of those one-on-ones. So they're more for them than they are for me, I think. And sometimes they'll ping me and say, hey, like, I feel good. I don't think there's anything super important to catch up on. Let's just get 60 minutes back into my day. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one important thing. I want to always be available for them. And again, not that they really ever need that, but if they do, I think they know that I'm always there. I guess some other kind of rituals or processes that I put through is that I then once a month will meet with all of their managers. So they all have managers under them who then manage people under them, and they may even have other managers under them. But I'll typically meet with every manager under my direct reports once a month, just for 30 minutes. Again, not super structured. It's really more of a way for them to kind of get visibility into what I'm focused on, what I'm caring about. And for them to kind of run me through some of the cool things that they're working on, right? It's like an opportunity for them to show the great work that they're doing. Because I think that's an important thing for folks that are typically like a level below, the VP level or even below director level, to be able to get that face time with leadership. But also to be able to kind of like learn what's top of mind for me, because I might give them feedback a bit differently than the way their manager would give them. And so I think that's something that became important to me, I think, once the team grew at G2, because I realized that, if I communicated a message down to people below me, and then they communicated that down to people below them, and then they communicated that to people below them, the message starts to get lost, Right. And what I find is, especially with like more junior managers that are newer, is they typically struggle to give constructive feedback to their teams. And I'm pretty like frank and pretty direct, and I really care though as well about giving feedback. So you mentioned radical candor before. I'm a massive fan of Kim Scott's kind of methodology. I think you can really be candid with your team, assuming that they know that you care about them, right? And so I try and really showcase that by my actions, that I do really care about them. But I find, I think when I started giving direct feedback to people, at a few levels lower than me, initially I think that was sort of surprising for them because, they weren't used to getting feedback. And then I think over time, they started to really appreciate it because sometimes they weren't getting as direct feedback from their own managers. And so I'll then, if I am giving that kind of a feedback, whether it's digitally via email or in person, I'll then share what feedback I gave to that person with that person's manager. So if it's an email, like I'll just forward the email thread, and I try and do that so that the managers themselves can see how I am kind of giving feedback to people below them. And I think over time that encourages them and empowers them to give more and more feedback themselves. So there are a few of the things. Let me think what else there is. I think I try and, so once a week I'll have all of my direct reports share with me, a bunch of different things that their teams are working on, what they're excited about, any roadblocks that they're facing. And they share that with me on a Friday, so that then on Monday morning when I meet with our senior leadership team, so the rest of our C-suite, so when I meet with our chief product officer, our chief research officer, our chief executive officer, our CFO, and all those, I kind of know like what are the exciting things, the impactful things that my team has just delivered that I can share to then build the personal brands of the people on my team and help them get validation and credibility with the C-suite. But then I also will then flag questions or asks or needing help that my team needs with the C-suite as well. So that's been something that like has been really helpful, actually, just to get into a routine of every Friday that my direct report's giving me an email or an update in Slack of just like those things, so that then I go in on Monday and I'm prepared. I'm trying to think what other things there are. I mean, I think just the most important thing with kind of building culture and teams is really to sort of to practice what you preach. And like, if you don't do it, like you can't expect your teams to do it. So I think, I try and manage my team in a really autonomous way, whereby I, 95% of the time am not breathing down their necks in terms of micromanaging them. I really, think if you hire great people, they'll just do great work. And, if you're seeing that someone isn't doing great work, like, it's your job as a manager to very quickly share that feedback with them and show them as well and help them see like what great work looks like. So I wouldn't just say to someone like, this work sucks. I would say, so look, I think this work sucks. No offense. Right. Here are some examples of like what I think is really, really good. And here is why, because of this. So can you take that and build that into your draft number 2? That is like some of the things I think about. But look, I think at the end of the day, when it comes to culture and team, I think you don't have to think about it as much if you hire really great people, because they will just infect everyone around them with great culture. And I see that, when I've found really amazing people and I add them onto the team and they bring the team average up. You just very quickly see everyone wants to be like them. They can see from looking how great these people are. And then that's the best way, I think, to help drive change around culture and teamwork.
Absolutely. Sounds amazing. And I love that very important insight that you shared with the audience today, which we, as leaders, we tend to make this mistake a lot of times. And we really need to leverage and write this down and avoid it, which is don't manage by expectations. Just be clear about what is the goal, what is the vision, what are the standards that we are playing with. So because a lot of times we are thinking so much about certain things and about certain concepts that we believe that our team is on our ads, and unfortunately they are not. So that's why repetition is so critical in a leadership position. Repeating, and not expecting nothing, but just giving the standards and letting them feel what the vision looks like.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think I'm lucky because, I'm a marketer, but I also consume lots of content. And so I get targeted probably more than anyone on Instagram and LinkedIn. And I'm just seeing lots of examples of really good content and really bad content. And, oftentimes bad content you won't see, right? Because the algorithms won't bring that to the top because they're not getting engagement. Yeah. And so I think I try and do a really good job at whenever I see something that I think is cool that caught my attention, I will share that with the person on my team responsible for that same function on our team. So for example, I think you had maybe someone from Clearbit on your podcast recently. Mm-hmm. Clearbit did a really interesting Instagram story ad recently that they're still doing that I loved. And the format was basically, it was a marketer on their team, and he was basically like kind of recording a selfie video. And he talked about kind of, the challenge of leads and how if you ask too many questions on a form, it'll decrease conversion. And obviously, they're selling that, if you use Clearbit, you won't need to ask as many questions on your form because, we can repopulate that for you. And, what they were selling, I didn't really care for as much. We use Clearbit. I'm a fan. But it was more like the format of the ad I liked. And it was a person looking directly at the camera. It was in, a vertical format, which worked perfectly for Instagram stories. And because of those things, it made the video look as if it was just a regular person, a friend of mine recording a video, which naturally catches your attention because you don't think it's marketing and advertising. And I think if I try and teach my team anything, it's that like the less you can make your work look like marketing, the better it will do, right? So that's why sending a plain text email typically works so much better than sending, a super designed email with fancy graphics. The fancy graphics tell the viewer that this is marketing, whereas when it's plain text, they need to read the plain text to see, like, is it my boss or is it, who is this emailing me? Same for like an ad, right? If there's fancy animations in a video on screen, immediately they know, okay, this is like a business's video. But if it's a person looking at the camera in a format that looks like could be, one of your friends, you'll stop and look a little bit longer, which will increase conversion rates. Yep. So it's sort of, I guess that's like, when I see those things, that's like a lesson that I notice. And then I try and, I guess, recognize the pattern. Why did this thing catch my attention? What are the components of it that made it really special? And then I'll share that with my team and why I thought it was good. And so the more I do that daily, which probably annoys them. But my hope is that it also inspires them to think differently.
That's amazing. And we come to our favorite question and the last one of the show, which is, if you'd have the opportunity to meet Ryan at the beginning of his journey at G2, what advice would you offer to Ryan?
That's a good one. I mentioned earlier kind of the idea of like balancing relationships and results. And I think, when I joined G2, it was my first CMO role. So I felt a lot of pressure to deliver results and deliver results quickly. And I think I don't just think like, no, I over-indexed results at the expense of relationships. So, it's easy in hindsight to say that, if I would go back, I would do it again differently. And I hope I could do it again differently. But at the same time, I'm really happy with where I am right now as well. So I don't know. I think I would have told myself maybe to not be as hard on myself about driving results as quickly as I thought I wanted them, so that I didn't, so that I didn't kind of not put coins in the relationship bank for some of the relationships at G2, which that would probably be my lesson for future like executives moving into executive roles.
That's an amazing way of closing the show. Ryan, thanks so much for making our time to share your experience with us today.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
And to our community, thanks for being there. And we keep here bringing you the best of the best so you can leverage their lessons and avoid their mistakes to scale from 2 million to 100 million as quickly as possible. So see you soon and keep scaling.